Good day everyone, my name is Aimee, this is Shannen, this is Megan. Today we will be doing a presentation on art eras that we researched for about a month. So along our research, there's a throbbing question in our heads that's always coming to us. What is art? Well, by definition, art is the expression of feelings and your imagination. It comes in many forms: dancing, music, artworks, sculptures, architecture, anything. Then anything could be art, so what exactly is art? Well, we'll get back to that, but first we want to play a game with you all. So here I have a few questions and I would like you guys to answer them for me, and if you could answer them, we'll begin and you could get a few treats. Prizes. Yeah. So, who would like to go first?
Brian.
Okay.
Brian is going first.
So, by the way, here we have like a few paintings that we did, and every time you take out a chip, there's going to be a number. We're going to flip the number.
Okay. So, Brian, what is the chip?
You like it?
Okay. Number?
3.
3.
Okay, just a sec.
Okay. This is the painting. What is the question?
Guess the arrows that starts with E.
That I. I. No.
Starts with I.
Letter
E.
I. E? E?
Oh
Oh yeah, E. I forgot. Can anyone guess the era that of this painting?
Expressionism.
Yes. Okay, for that. Catch.
Tiki.
Okay. So, we're going to begin with Expressionism. Expressionism was an art era that occurred in the first quarter of the 20th century. It originated mainly after the First World War as a reaction against the depression and anxiety that the casualties from the war inflicted on the people. So it originated mainly in Germany through poetry and then in paintings. And there's like a lot of famous pieces and artists of this time. One of them is The Scream, which goes like, ah, which I'm sure you'll all know. And that is,
Is it there?
it's going to be there later.
Alright.
It's a piece by Edward Munch, and the other famous artists include Pablo Picasso, Wassily Kandinsky, and Paul Klee. So we didn't take an invention. On the other hand, we take like this political side of things, which really shaped the era, which, as I said before, was the First World War, which occurred in 1914 to 1919. So yes, it was a reaction against the depression, anxiety, and the trauma from the war, and the paintings, because they can't express those feelings verbally or as much, they found a way to express it through paintings. So as you can see, these are like some of the pictures and the paintings that was very famous at the time. That one is called Blue Horses, and a woman in a green jacket, and that's the first painting that we discussed. That was The Scream by Edward Munch.
Wait, so how do we know the painting is expressionism or not?
Well, that's a good question, Megan. So as you can see, there's a lot of strong colors used in the era, and that is used to convey strong feelings and emotions, which is mainly the depression and such. And it also includes distorted or exaggerated subjects, like how curved and like bent the horses' necks are, and shocking and vivid color schemes that contrast each other. So this is the piece that we're going to further analyze. It's called Anxiety, another painting by Edward Munch. So if you can see the subject, which is like the people in front here and the bottom of the background, it's very dark and gray. And what do you think that represents?
Sadness.
Sadness. Yay! Can I choose one a tree?
But I want MSG.
You get MSG. Thank you. That represents sadness, and that's basically the entire theme of the foreground, which is like sadness. If you can see their face, it's oversimplified, and they're pale and gray and gloomy, yes. And the skies are, on the other hand, very bright and vibrant, and it's orange and red. And that contrast happens because the idea behind this painting is that in the inside, people then felt like this raging anxiety and pain and trauma, but they can't show it physically, and their faces just turns out to look unspirited. And that's it.
Is this a reflection of the depression?
Yes. Next. Oh, okay. Okay, next. Someone's gonna pick out another chair.
Lucia, you can check
Lucia,
Michael.
Grace wants to do it like Grace. I'm gonna be so
Yes.
wrong.
Grace needs Emily.
Careful.
One. And what is the question?
I guess the error clue starts with I.
Clue starts with I.
What do you think?
Impressionism?
Hooray!
Okay, that was my topic.
That's it, man.
Get one, Richard.
So, Impressionism. Impressionism started from the year 1867 until 1886. So the famous painters include Claude Monet, which painted the Impression sunrise, which the previous group said made the name Impressionism. And there's also Paul Gauguin, Vincent van Gogh, which painted several infamous paintings, including the Starry Night. So why exactly did Impressionism happen? Well, the painters got bored of the classical paintings, like the person hanging from the cloud, or the army people going to war, or people murdering each other. And then so they really wanted to embrace their scenery, the lake, the waves, the ocean, the wind, the trees, nature. And so it reflected on everything, the people, the feelings, the aura.
Everything that's around us, basically.
Yeah.
So basically, Impressionism is about nature.
And it's not only about nature, but it's about their daily life.
It's also about people and then their daily activities,
Yeah.
daily chores.
So the invention in this area is called serial photomontage.
Megan, what is a serial photo montage?
Good question. So serial photomontage is when you take pictures of a moment. And so when you take a picture of a moment and then you compile it together, it looks like a stop motion. Now, Claude Monet did the same exact thing, only he didn't take a picture, he created paintings. So the painting had the same subjects with different lightings and with different techniques, different perspectives.
So that must have taken a while.
Days.
That's it? Days? Can be months?
Days, months,
Years.
We
Yeah.
don't know.
So it is like the burst in our iPhone, but it is in the form of paintings.
Yeah. So
That
this
must
is,
take forever.
yeah. Don't know how they do it. So this is the first painting I told you, the Impression sunrise. There's the sunrise, the lake, there's like a boat of a person here. And then this is the artist Claude Monet. And another painter called Vincent van Gogh's self-portrait. I don't know how you paint yourself.
You take a mirror.
Quite narcissistic.
But this is difficult, yes, it is
Yeah.
difficult.
And this is his paintings. Starry Night.
Yay. So, how do you know if it's Impressionism or not?
So Impressionism, sorry, the painting of Impressionism has really has the characteristics of that their paints are really streaky. So you can see thin streaks of paint, and the paint doesn't mix with each other, so you can really see the color contrast. Yeah. So one painting I chose to further analyze is another painting by Van Gogh, and it's called Wheat Field with Crows. Why would you want to paint crows? Because he lived in a farm, and he really wanted to embrace its beauty, and so here it is. And while he was painting this, he was in a really depressed moment, and so the dark blue sky represents his depression, his loneliness, his sadness, and his confusion.
So the bird symbolizes that.
Yeah.
You want to give her another one?
I didn't get anything.
There wasn't a question.
I was participating.
So the dark color was contrasted with the light colors of the wheat field, which depicts happiness and beauty. So like Miss Cindy said previously, there are crows heading up to the sky, and there's this road leading to nowhere, which people say it symbolizes his near-death life, because, you know, he cut off his ear and then committed suicide. Depression. So that sums up Impressionism. Next topic.
Michael.
Oh yeah, by the way, feel free to ask questions or make comments if no along the way. If you have any questions or anything, you're gonna get prizes. What number? Five?
Oh, okay.
Oh no! Oh no! Okay, what is the question?
Modern.
That's the only clue we give. Modern. Guess what era it is? Anyone?
Pop
Art!
Pop
Curious this hand so he gets us something. I'm behind you. Okay, you get one too. You get one too. Yay! Okay, catch.
Jingle it! Jingle it!
Oh,
Panic!
not.
That took a while.
Technical problems. We're back to this again.
What are these?
What do you learn?
Batu.
Gua salah gitu.
Okay. So pop art, as you know, is the most modern and familiar art you know, I guess. It started around the 1950s in London, where a group of artists calling themselves the Independent Group decided that art doesn't have to be something so original. You can take it from any source that is available and make it into something, and it's called art. And that's also considered as fine art because usually its value is lower, whereas you're comparing it to mythological or impressionism or just pretty abstract, you know? So it started in London and then it grew in New York, where artists like they called themselves Neo-Dada artists. They liked the idea that you could take pop culture into art. So they started doing that, and around the mid-1950s, artists like Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein was inspired by these Neo-Dada artists. So, yeah, that's about it. So the invention around this era was inkjet printers and digital printing, which really helped mass producing these artworks because they used to do screen printing, and that took a really long time because you need to layer in the ink in the mass and in silk, so you have to do it multiple times to get a pigment color.
So that's how Andy Warhol started.
Yeah, he started with screen printing. So as you can see, this is a collage of pop artworks, where you can see they are bold colors, and they're usually taken from pop culture references, like comic strips, the famous Mickey Mouse, the Campbell soup, etc. This is another way of showing the world, as in like they're taking daily objects, people, icons, and pop art really made a new difference for business because you're taking art and making it you're mass producing it and then you're selling it, which wasn't like that before. Yeah. So the artwork that I wanted to further analyze is the Marilyn Monroe by Andy Warhol. And as you can see, it's this famous pop icon in different colors. And he wanted to show that artists like her, behind all the glitz and glamour and the famous lifestyle she has, she's struggling and she has pain, and she's just like any other person that isn't famous. She's just like every one of us, while the popularity makes her so much more. And this is quite interesting because he painted this about 2 weeks after she committed suicide. So he really wanted to show that she had struggles and she's in pain as well. And that's why it is in many different colors, showing her sides when she's in public and when she's hiding herself, like the anxiety and the pain and the stress. Okay. Who would like to go next?
Dio.
Okay, deal. Big one. Now,
What number?
that. Good job, guys.
2. And what is the question?
That's the era. Geometry.
Guess the era.
Yang kemarin dengan luas. Semua memang.
Yes.
Kubisme.
Cubism.
Gue.
Good Dio.
Yo.
Artwork, huh?
Semangat. Gue punya mana?
You don't get one.
Oh.
Hexar.
Okay.
So me again, Cubism. Cubism is the art era after Impressionism, and it started around 1907 until 1914. And it started in Paris, where Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque decided that fine art didn't have to be so grounded. Like a person, you could see that they have facial features and they have hands that are slim or this body
Yeah,
shape,
curves,
but
yes.
curves. But you could see something in different ways. Like she could have a really sharp jaw or making her eyes into triangles or boxes, and it still could be called art. And at the time, that wasn't really popular, and they got a few critics from that. But that's just how it is. And the word cubism came from the critic by, what is his name again? His name is really French. So, no. The painting Georges Braque, he decided to paint a landscape, and using cubes instead of making the typical mountains and trees. And
Do you have the piece?
no, I don't. But the name is Houses at La Creste, and it is a critique from Louis Vaxels. And he's decided that, ooh, it's abstract and cube-ish. So the word stuck and it developed into cubism. Yeah. The cubism is also influenced by non-Western art, like Pablo Picasso's painting Les Demoiselles, and it was inspired by African art, African tribal art, which had a lot of lines, and I don't have a picture here as well.
Do you have any pictures of Cubism?
Yes.
Please show us
Yes,
and
after
explain
this.
it. Yeah.
So around this era, it was the time of war. World War I just started. And although it doesn't really connect, neon lamps was discovered around that era as well. And it was something new, and that kind of correlated with the idea of cubism being a new type of art form, which not a lot accepted at the time. So next. There you go, cubism.
All right, explain one at least.
I'm going to be explaining 3 musicians by Pablo Picasso in the next slide. But the characteristics of all these artworks are that by this you can see that it's called a self-portrait by Salvador Dali, but you can't really see the face. The face. Somewhere it's, yeah. Which is why this is an art form in multiple point of views. You can see it in different perspectives, you can switch it around, and you can find a different artwork in just one painting. And it is the subject is broken into pieces and then reassembled. It could be layered upon and made into geometrical shapes. And it's usually in monochromatic color scheme, like warm reddish browns, tans, cool blues, and greys. And that is to give more focus to the shapes instead of the color scheme. Okay, so this is Pablo Picasso's 3 musicians. And this is a reference from the characters of a famous Italian theater called Commedia dell'arte. And these are the characters supposedly Pyro, Harlequin, and a singing monk. As you can see, they're all having instruments, and it's kind of like a trend for cubist artists to paint people with playing music. And this is supposed, in Pablo Picasso's point of view, it was supposed to represent Pablo Picasso, his friend Max Jacobs, and this guy, Guillaume Paul.
That's all right.
Yeah. This is a memoir.
I'm just turning his grave right now because you didn't get his name right.
Yeah. So what he wanted to do was, he was a really big fan of this theater, and this was supposed to show the stage and in a box-like room, and they're all just having memories and playing together. And this is like a memoir for this poet, because he recently passed away because he was deceased, and this was like a way for Pablo Picasso to remember him. Okay.
Okay, so that's it on cubism.
Chip again. Chip. You have 2 more.
Okay.
2 more. So
Chip.
Can I go again?
Josia, come.
Okay.
Đấy rồi, người đại học khi được quá nhanh.
Number? You want me to?
Có cái sản phẩm này.
Number?
Bây giờ tôi explain it.
Well, very something.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Number 4.
Tôi nên.
Okay, this is the piece.
All
I'm
right.
sure you could all guess it by now.
What's the question?
The clue, it makes you confused.
Abstrak. Tahu kan gue abstrak.
Well, you got it. You
Abstrak
got it. Well, who got it first?
Aku lah.
We
Oh,
don't
lu. Abstrak. Gue dulu.
Mike did one, and then
Gue.
why do you want so much? I don't know. Cheryl lollipop you too. Here, there's another one. Yay!
The goods.
Okay. So,
So, abstract expressionism began after the Second World War, and the people from the Second World War were really stressed out and just mad, in distress, anxious, angry, sad, fear, and all the negative energy. And so it was done in the 1940s. It was explored in the 1940s. But the first ever abstract expressionism was painted by Kandinsky in the 1900s. So psychologists, psychiatrists, after they interviewed painters after creating paintings, they came to conclusions that painters who create abstract expressionism, they create the painting from their subconscious mind, and so they don't realize that they have this feeling, but they actually feel it. So whatever they're feeling is actually true and comes from within. So this was the same era that invented the color television. So this era really explored the use of colors in art and in technology. It's very messy, the artworks of abstract expressionism. So what all these have in common is that the colors are mixed together and there are no patterns. So it's distorted, formless, and yeah, you can't, when you look at it, you can't look at just one point. Like you see everything as a whole. So there's no subject. And there's only scattered lines, scattered paints, and shapes.
Basically, everyone can do this. Like they just splash all the colors of paint and then, hey, I made an abstract painting.
Yeah. The abstract painting was me. I'm the only talentless in arts.
Don't worry, Megan, we're friends.
Yeah. So the painting I further analyzed is called Ocean Greyness from Jackson Pollock. So if you can see from afar, if you really look at it, you can see there's a face.
Somewhere.
Right? Like there's the eyes. There's two eyes.
Two eyes.
There's a couple eyes.
There are many eyes. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3. Yeah.
That looks like a mustache, actually.
Yeah.
Pringles. So the gray background, the majority of the color is gray, which represents confusion, anxiety, fear, anger, and through his eyes of the world, of how he is feeling. And there's also shades, hints of red all over, which shows that there are dangers all around us in this world. But however, there are also white, yellow, orange, green, which shows life, and then there's hope and happiness too.
Okay, the last one.
Guys,
Guess we're just gonna like.
Please give it to Adrian.
No.
udah tahu juga sih.
Okay, there's like one left. Read the clue.
Ini apa nggak ada?
I'm excited.
Me too.
What do you mean? tadi.
Okay, give it to Adrian.
What was the
Iya, Rafael juga.
Adrian?
Okay, it's number.
Yeah, it's number 6. We flipped it. That's the last one.
Okay, yes,
Yes.
I get it.
What's the clue?
Guess where the era originated.
Originated. He
Ted.
has troubles pronouncing the word
Yes.
originated. Yes, guess the
This is
era.
terrible.
Guess the origin of this era. Anyone?
It's not abstract.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, cheating! You listened yesterday.
I know it. Give it to me, miss, because I read.
Apa? Eranya apa?
Give it to me, miss.
It's from Japan. You won't know the era, so might as well
Dari
you
Jepang.
not.
Kayak
Yeah.
Yes,
Japan from Japan.
Just look at the clouds. It's the same in the comics. See?
Kira dari Nepal atau dari mana?
See?
Ya udah, minta ini apa?
No?
Lah.
You didn't answer. No?
Gua udah bantuin
She answered
buka.
it.
Adrian.
We'll get to that. So the era is yes from Japan, and it's called the Kamakura era, or the Kamakura period. It was from the 12th century to the 14th century in Japan, and the origin of it. I'm just gonna tell like the little story that was behind this era. So there was this samurai. His name was Minamoto no Yorimoto, and there was this enemy group that was in Japan for a very long time, crossing borders, everything like that. They were pissed at them. And then at one point, Samurai Yorimoto defeated the enemy group, and as like an appreciation, the king gave him the title of shogun, which means that the highest power in the military was with him, and since it's like a military imperialism at the time, Japan assumes him as like the leader regardless of the emperor. So this marked the beginning of imperialism and feudalism in Japan, and hence this era. So the inventions of this era included the shogun, because what I didn't mention before was that Yorimoto was the very first shogun Japan has ever had. And the idea of having a shogun led to feudalism, which is a system where people serve someone of a higher rank for their protection. In this case, the people of Kamakura served Shogun Yorimoto for his protection. Okay, so here are some of like the pieces, and other than paintings and scrolls, the era was also famous for sculptures. So the characteristics of this era is that they have like monochromatic and very subtle color schemes, and their paintings are usually roofless, and like this goes on until here, and then like everything else is blank, so it's roofless. And their media is either on silk or paper, and they use ink, or use wood or precious stones for their sculptures. Another detail that is often included is elements of samurai, because they idolized samurais at the time, and also Zen Buddhism. Why is there an hand? Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism was also an idea at the time that was famous because their values of concentration and meditation aligned with the values of a samurai. Okay, so this is a random piece that I took out to analyze, but it turns out it was religious, so we're gonna get into this. This piece is actually 1 out of 34 illustrations out of a 7-meter long scroll, which was on chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra, entitled Universal Gateway by Sugawara Mitsushige. So, Lotus Sutra is basically like one of the Bibles of Mahayana Buddhism that they believed in. So chapter 25 is entitled Universal Gateway, and the chapter discusses of this goddess named Kwanshinin Bodhisattva, and she casts protection to anyone who chants her name. So if you can see here, there's like this lady and the supposed goddess who casts protection against the monster that's over here.
Yes, the demon.
The demon, the monster, whatever, the ghost. I don't know. It's painted in red to symbolize that he is a dangerous creature and he is evil. That was it on Kamakura, and now we're here on the the piece that we took from the Museum Maten visit. So if you remember, this is a piece entitled "Do Not Prevent the Fertility of the Mind" by Aimee. The piece is an installation that falls under conceptual art and under modern art, which is the now form of art, era of art. Basically, there is Aimee painted portraits in red and white to symbolize her being a part of our country, and IUD tools, which is a contraceptive that was forced upon the people because back then the Planned Parenthood only limits one family to have 2 children. So that was a way of the government to limit a woman's reproductive rights. And there's this blood, a little beaker of blood in the middle, and that symbolizes the fertility a woman has once she has menstruation, which means that she is fertile in terms of her reproductive organs, but also that symbolizes that she is grown and she has her rights to creativity and her self-expression. And the idea behind the piece is that if the government limits a woman's reproductive rights, then they are also limiting our freedom and our expressions, since we don't even have rights to control our own body, then what rights do we have? Another point of view of this piece, Ms. Shannen said, was that if we're limiting the children that we're going to have, then we're limiting the possibilities of possible pioneers and geniuses and creative minds that are going to be born in Indonesia.
So, we've explained about all 6 eras of art. Oh, that's funny. All 6 eras of art, and 7 including the one from Museum Maten. And so we can say that art is a reflection of the painter itself and also of the eras that they're living in. So it reflects on how they were feeling during the time and what was happening and the situation of the era. So, in conclusion, we can say that the world is art.
Art. Could you see it?
Maksudnya apa sih? Oh, world is art. Oh, iya.
Can we show it to him how it is?
A. R. T. You can read.
Oh ya ampun, itu A. Lihat nggak sih nih? Itu kan gunung.
Oh,
A.
R.
Tuhan. Itu T.
Okay, that's good. Very good. Very clear. Okay, thank you very much.